There is a Japanese proverb, "Ame-futte-jikatamaru," which means, after the rain, the ground becomes firmer. The earth is our home. Racially, people may be different, but in their hearts, they are the same. They really want peace.
In 1945, Takeo Taguchi was a fighter pilot in the Japanese Air Force, assigned to the defense of Tokyo. Today, a writer, educator, and lecturer in Japan, he resides not far from the city he once defended. James Hall was a member of a B-29 crew in 1945. Today, the president of a professional parachuting firm, he lives in California, where he instructs Air Force test pilots in free-fall parachuting techniques.
I enlisted to be a fighter pilot, but I was too young, and the Air Force needed bomber crews, so I was elected. The type of guys who wanted to fly were kids like myself, who didn't worry much about getting killed.
In the closing weeks of World War II, while the cities of Japan burned, the lives of Lieutenant Taguchi and Sergeant Hall came together briefly. Two fighting men, one Japanese, one American, relived that moment in history. In 1944, the capture of the Mariana Islands provides the United States with easily supplied air bases for its long-range bombers, only 1,500 miles from the Japanese mainland. The key to American air strategy is the revolutionary B-29. These heavily armed bombers, the largest produced in the war, are capable of flying at altitudes of 38,000 feet and are able to carry payloads up to 15,000 pounds. On November 24th, the first wave of superfortresses takes off for Japan in a series of raids designed to bring the Japanese people to their knees. While an American debate wages whether to continue precision bombing or to bomb the highly inflammable residential areas, more and more men are being rushed through training in the United States. One such airman, now at a replacement training center in Texas, is 18-year-old Corporal James Hall.
I'm stationed at the Pyote Rattlesnake Air Base. Until I got to Texas, I'd never seen a B-29 before. They're still highly classified. We have to have all types of security passes to get on the flight line. I'm amazed at the size of this aircraft. A huge thing. It looks too big to fly. We're really testing out these planes, mainly in long, monotonous flights over Texas and New Mexico. We have engine fires, landing gear malfunctions, bomb bay failures, and we lose some airplanes, but we iron out most of the bugs. I don't give much thought to the job I'm doing. I figure we're at war, and the men running this Air Force know a lot more about it than I do. We'll be training here until about April, and then be shipped overseas. They'll give us a new B-29 to take with us.
To meet the threat posed by the B-29s, the Japanese home defense system is reorganized. Special air defense squadrons are allocated to major cities and key industrial areas. Among the airmen assigned to defend Tokyo was a young fighter pilot, Lieutenant Takeo Taguchi.
I have been sent to the Tachikawa Air Base near Tokyo. Because there are not enough planes for us to fly, many of us have been reassigned to ground crews and anti-aircraft batteries. My battery will defend the sky over Imperial Palace. It is a very important responsibility. It is really useless to fire at B-29s. They are too high for the range of our guns. Also, our guns are of inferior quality. They become so hot that they cannot be fired more. There is much use of the expression, "shikata ga nai," which means, what cannot be done, cannot be done. Airplanes are even now bombing the field. I can see our planes being destroyed on the ground. More of our planes are being shot down in the air.
By the beginning of 1945, the B-29 raids are having a noticeable effect on Japanese war production, already faltering due to the tightening blockade and the loss of important foreign bases. As the B-29 raids intensify, Japan's defense measures become desperate. Over 8 million children and non-essential urban dwellers are evacuated to the country. Those who remain are mobilized into civilian defense brigades. Slogans such as 100 million, one mind are commonplace. But the average Japanese, faced with destruction at home and defeat abroad, has begun to lose trust in his military leaders. Only for the emperor do they reserve their wholehearted respect and devotion. He embodies the Yamato spirit, for which the Japanese will make any sacrifice, including life itself.
Evacuation to the countryside has been formally encouraged. Still, many people have preferred to remain in Tokyo. The transportation system is at a standstill. Streetcars, buses, trains, all have stopped or are giving limited service as a result of the raids. The electricity goes off frequently, and it is often impossible to send messages or to make phone calls. Are now being drafted. In the past, they had been deferred as a special group, but now they are being conscripted by whole classes.
In spite of inadequate planes and inferior guns, Japanese defenses are effective. After 22 raids, only 5% damage is done to industrial targets. In addition, unplotted headwinds over the mainland make precision bombing difficult.
Very few men on Tinian who have been here a long time. The morale is quite good. The mess halls are made of wood. The food is adequate, mainly powdered eggs and Australian mutton. On my off-duty hours, I play baseball mostly, or swim a little. There are still Japanese in the jungles, and periodically they come out and raid the airstrips and burn a plane or two.
In March 1945, a decision is made. Mass formations of B-29s will strike Japanese cities at night, flying at low altitudes and carrying incendiaries. The first such raid is scheduled for March 10th. The target, the paper city of Tokyo.
Incendiary bombs fall from the sky like rain, almost noiselessly. Night is like day. Even the sky seems to be on fire. We watch Tokyo burn, and we are dumbfounded by the sight. We feel utterly helpless. The destruction is so great, and nothing can be done.
In one night, 15 square miles are reduced to ashes. 84,000 people lose their lives, and 1 million are made homeless. To a Japanese broadcaster, the sea of fire is reminiscent of the burning of Nero's Rome. March 1945. The B-29 air war against Japan is now unrestricted, with raids on Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, Yokohama, and other cities. Japanese, each raid with all its horror produces a distinctive identification. The raid of the dancing flames, the raid of the leaping tigers, the raid of the fire wind. With all of Japan reeling from the air attacks, American military leaders search for ways of bringing the war to an end. Operation Olympic, scheduled for the fall of the year, will be the first invasion assault on the Japanese mainland. In the meantime, the air war is to continue. On May 23rd, a final knockout blow is directed against Tokyo. The pilots have orders to gut the city.
This being my first raid, everything is new to me. I really don't know what to expect. Of course, it's all very exciting. The rest of the crew have been on 31 missions. They're all extremely apprehensive. I guess they know what to fear, whereas I don't. Extremely low, about 2,000 feet above the ground. The bright moon reflects off the oil-stained wings. I've never seen anything like this. The whole city seems to be burning. There is no navigation problem at all. We have seen the fires a good 100 miles out. glowing skyline reminds me of the steel mills in Pittsburgh. Suddenly, all the lights in Flack Alley pinpoint our bomber like a fly on a movie screen. I'm not scared, just surprised at what's going on. There is so much action. The flak is intense and accurate.
Tokyo is scratched from the list of incendiary targets. More than one-third of the city has been laid waste. American aircraft can now penetrate Japanese defenses with impunity. By July, Japan is on the brink of disaster. Casualties as a result of the raids are more than Japan's combined military losses to date. Japan's air losses have reached catastrophic proportions, nearly 2,000 planes a month. The civilian population, underfed, fatigued, and discouraged, are at the end of their endurance. In a last valiant effort, hundreds of Japanese planes are specially fitted for kamikaze attacks. If B-29s cannot be shot down, they will be brought down by mid-air ramming.
There is no longer time to analyze what we do. We are in a whirlwind. The individual has ceased to exist. If one is loyal, one must be prepared to die. We do not mind being kamikaze pilots. We are glad to do this for our country.
Japanese pilots scatter their lives over the cities of their homeland. A series of events have begun which cannot be stopped. It is the morning of August the 6th, 1945. In a matter of seconds, over 70,000 lives are snuffed out, and about 70,000 gravely injured. The atom bomb explosion has destroyed nearly 5 square miles of Hiroshima. Before Japan has time to recover from this Holocaust, an atom bomb is dropped on Nagasaki on August the 9th. On August 14th, the Japanese government decides to accept the distasteful allied terms of unconditional surrender. Atomic warfare has made further resistance futile.
We aren't really sure what's happened. We're happy about the war ending, but I don't think everyone believes this thing about the atom bomb. I think it might be some kind of propaganda device that gives the Japanese a good excuse to surrender. Perhaps the Japanese said we dropped a bomb, and we're just going along with them. There aren't any big celebrations, and as far as there being any big emotional letdown, there isn't any. We're just glad it's all over, that we'll be going home.
Officially, the end comes at 10:30 a.m., September the 2nd, 1945.
Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always. These proceedings are closed.
Following the surrender of Japan, Lieutenant Takeo Taguchi will begin a new life amid the ruins of his country. After completing his studies in 1956, he will travel through the United States and Europe, making first-hand observations of educational systems. Sergeant James Hall will return to the United States in October 1945. He will re-enlist for 2 years and receive a commission in the Air Force. Later, as a university student, he will earn a degree in geology and engineering. American air power played a decisive role in achieving the final victory of World War II. The ruined cities of Japan were grim witness to the effectiveness of thousands of planes carrying hundreds of thousands of bombs. Yet it was 2 planes carrying 2 bombs that changed forever the future of warfare and the course of human history.
It seemed at this point that the whole outcome of the fighting depended on good trucks and drivers with the ability to keep them rolling day and night. We had to get there fastest with the mostest.
In 1944, Gerald Keane was one of hundreds of thousands of men invading Europe. He helped to win the first battle every army must win, the Battle of Supply. Formerly of Red Oak, Iowa, he lives today in Los Angeles, California, where he is a sales representative for a national shoe firm. Today, Carl Sachs resides in Lakewood, California, and is engaged in landscaping. Formerly from East Prussia, he served with the Wehrmacht during World War II. First as a combat infantryman on the Eastern Front, and later with a quartermaster company in France.
Once the Allies landed in France, it was like the last act in a play. All the action was moving to a climax, and everyone wanted the outcome to be in his favor.
Across the war-torn landscape of France and Germany, Gerald Keane and Carl Sachs traveled much the same roads. Two fighting men, one American, one German, relived that moment in history. On July 25th, 1944, the Allied forces fighting in Normandy began a massive offensive to smash out of the bitterly contested beachhead and thrust forward across the face of France to Germany. The Allies pour onto the beaches of Normandy more men and supplies, and additional men to handle their delivery and distribution. One of these soldiers is Corporal Gerald Keane.
It's D+6 when we land at Omaha Beach. I'm in charge of 4 trucks. The roads aren't much. I'm in the rear truck with my .50 caliber machine gun, and we drive like we never drove before, because we're carrying gasoline. Everybody hits the road. Everybody's making sure his name isn't on any bullets flying around.
While German defense forces fight the Allies on the beaches, supply units rush ammunition to the Normandy sectors. In one of these supply companies is Corporal Carl Sachs.
Our company is made up mostly of veterans wounded previously on other fronts. We service the 1st Panzer Division, a division of the Hitler Youth. Compared to us, these young soldiers seem like children, but they are the ones holding the front line. Some soldiers were captured by the Americans, returned back through the lines this morning. The Americans sent them back, saying, "Go home, you are too young to fight." What the Americans don't know is that these boys are some of the most fierce troops we have. They are going back into the line, not home.
Planes of the Allied Air Force bombed German positions along a narrow front at San Lo, opening the way for a rapid and powerful drive by American infantry and armored units.
The dog faces appreciate everything the guys in the motor transport are doing. They always ask us, where are we heading for? But we can't tell them. They know there's trouble ahead, and nobody's happy about it. It's really rough hauling the troops up to the line and just leaving them. Our losses have been heavy, and when we bring back the wounded, I can see the suffering in their faces. That expressionless, empty look. They're like zombies, most of them. It's pitiful what this fighting does to a human being. He'll never be the same man again. We finally reached St. Lo, and it's a shambles. You can see it was once a pretty little city, but now nothing's left. We drive through slowly, and it's like passing through a bunch of broken tombs.
feed ammunition to our tanks and artillery from dumps set back in the forest, camouflaged with great care to avoid discovery by enemy aircraft. During the day, all movement is kept to a minimum, but at night, the area swarms with activity. Our truck drivers returning from the front give us bits of information about the fighting going on. The news is bad. Our troops are suffering heavy casualties from the enemy aircraft. And the wish of our soldiers is to see the Luftwaffe sweep the skies clean. But not one of our planes do we see.
Spearheads now fan out, capturing Colitanz and Avalanche in the south. The enemy fights tenaciously, but he is reeling from the power and speed of the Allied attack. By July 27th, complete breakout from the Normandy beaches has been achieved. The American 4th Armored Division advances 25 miles in 36 hours. The Germans retreat to regroup.
Orders come for us to move our ammunition depot 10 kilometers to the rear. This alone is enough to tell us the fighting is going against us. No army likes to retreat. You drive back and wonder how much blood it will cost to retake the ground we are giving up so easily.
General George Patton appears on the battle line as the commander of the new U.S. Third Army. A freewheeling, don't worry about the flanks combat leader, he is the ideal choice to exploit the breakout. He sends a strong spearhead force slashing toward the Seine. Within 3 days, his 15th Corps armored spearheads have wheeled as far east as Le Mans, deep to the rear of the German army. On August 6th, the Germans launch a desperate counterattack to break through to Avalanche and cut off Patton's rampaging Third Army at its base.
There is much confusion between echelons here and at the front. From our truck drivers, we learned that shells of the wrong caliber were delivered to units on the line. Everyone suspects sabotage, but it is too late to do anything. The enemy has overrun our forward positions. Once more, we are forced to retreat.
Pounded unmercifully by air bombings, artillery, and armor, the Germans retreat in stunned disorder through a gap at Falaise. The commanders desperately urge their troops to hold open the mouth of the closing pocket. Their hope is to save their panzer divisions for a stand at the Seine River. Infantry and 2 panzer divisions are captured, but over 49,000 combat troops managed to escape. Now the race to the Seine is on.
Things are really beginning to move now. You can tell it by the abandoned trucks and destroyed enemy tanks along the roadside. Compared to our trucks, the German trucks look real ancient, and they haven't gotten near the goal. I wouldn't trade anything for this powerhouse I'm driving.
We reach the Seine. Only few bridges are left and our whole army must cross over them. My company hides in the forest until it is time for us to cross over. Somehow we hope it will be possible to establish a defense once we are across the river. But from what I have seen, it does not seem that anything can stop the enemy.
Numerous spearheads surge across western France, at times gaining as much as 50 miles in one day. Chartres and Orléans fall, and beyond the Seine, Paris.
We drive through the city and see a lot of happy people, just like a holiday. Paris is a beautiful city, but we don't get much chance to enjoy it. Before we know it, we're on the go again.
And then Patton's gas runs out. The whole east advance comes to a halt. Patton orders part of his reserve force to drain their tanks and transfer their gas to attacking units. But even this expedient only brings limited gains. Now, for the first time, the Allies feel the frustration of supply limitations. There are virtually no stocks between Normandy and the small army dumps 300 miles away. Each Allied army demands priorities for gasoline and lubricants, and a war of words develops between Patton and other army commanders for the lion's share of supply and transport. Never in the history of warfare has the importance of supply been better demonstrated, and he who would master this extended battlefield must first master his delivery of supplies. Without ammunition, without fuel, no battle can be planned, no advance can be made. August 1944. The Allied drive across France is halted as armored divisions outrun their supply lines. To get the attack moving again, the Red Ball Express is organized by the Allied command. The Army Transportation Corps, commanded by General John Lee, pools all the available motor transport facilities into one organization called the Advanced Section Motor Transport Brigade. 141 truck companies, over 3,000 men are committed to the Red Ball Express. The Red Ball plan calls for a looped, one-way traffic route stretching across northwest France from the supply depots to the fighting fronts and back again. Red Ball means fast through freight in the lingo of American railroaders. Traffic control points are established in all major towns to record the movement of convoys, check their destination, and determine their cargo. The supporting services have their job too. Thousands of road markers are placed along 800 miles of roadway. The Signal Corps strings endless miles of telephone and telegraph wires.
Truck usually sets a speed of 25 miles per hour. That seems very slow, but when you have trucks strung out over several miles, the last trucks really have to roll to keep pace with the convoy. That's when you really have to keep on the ball and really drive. They don't want any stragglers left on this road.
Replenished with gas and ammunition, the American armored columns again surge forward. By August 29th, Patton's Third Army has crossed the Marne, captured Rheims and Chalon-sur-Marne. Patton now aims his armored spearheads toward Verdun, Saint-Mihiel, and Combercy. But almost immediately, this new momentum by the advancing armies puts new strains and demands on the Red Ball Express. Relief drivers are urgently needed, and they are recruited from every outfit on the continent, even infantry units. Each truck is on the move 20 hours a day. It's drive, 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 night and day. Drivers fight exhaustion and accidents increase.
It's so hard sometimes to keep your eyes open, especially at night. But you must have eyes in the dark, even when you're dead tired. We hear about guys getting killed from falling asleep, but we try not to think about it. You can't drive a tank without gas, and you can't fight without food and ammunition. And so we thank God for our good trucks and good drivers, because without the Red Bull Highway, the courage on the front would die for sure.
By August 29th, the Red Ball Express reaches peak performance. Almost 6,000 trucks deliver 12,000 long tons of supplies to the forward areas. The columns of prisoners marching rearward as the trucks move forward is proof that the Red Ball Express is paying off. While the Red Ball Express convoys work without let-up, a crucial meeting of Allied commanders takes place at Chartres to determine disposition of supplies. General Eisenhower wants the major portion to go to General Hodge's First Army. Patton protests that his main force has been halted at the Meuse River for 2 days because of insufficient supplies. He wants more fuel so his tanks can break for the German border. He persuades Eisenhower to increase his allotments, saying, "My men can eat their belts, but my tanks gotta have gas." Patton's Third Army thrusts armored columns across the Meuse River, capturing Verdun and Commercy. With astounding speed, they ford the Moselle River near Nancy and Metz.
At first we wouldn't believe it. Then we found out it was true. An attempt was made against Hitler's life, and he was severely wounded. Our company is shocked and angered. Here we are fighting with our backs against the wall, and there is treachery at home. What are we coming to? We ask ourselves. I remember how peaceful the French countryside looked when I first arrived here. The same countryside is now a death trap, every step of the way. French snipers fire on us constantly, and we must waste much valuable time to patrol against them.
The British and the American First Army strike hard toward Belgium, devouring supplies with an insatiable appetite. But the Red Ball Express drivers bear the brunt of the stepped-up Allied advances. Accidents increase, and within 1 month, over 6,000 vehicles are serviced for major repairs. Replacements flow in, and tired and exhausted drivers are sent back to hospitals and rest camps.
My truck is much like a woman, quite temperamental. I live with it. It's part of me. You don't just get in and drive. You have to know how it feels, what it's doing. And if you don't know how to handle it, you get into a mess of trouble. We always carry cigarettes and chocolate and stuff under our seats, and the French civilians know it. When the convoy slows down, they appear from everywhere. So we toss them mostly candy and some cigarettes.
what sadness. The people are living in cellars like frightened animals. There is little to eat. The will to fight on is gone. But no one can say I quit. Our company is given more guns, more trucks, and orders to move against the enemy again. In our hearts, we feel that none of us will survive this war.
By September 5th, the original mission of the Red Ball Express is officially completed. Over 89,000 tons of supplies have been delivered to frontline armies, an average of 7,400 tons a day. In 10 short days, this unplanned, improvised organization far surpassed the highest hopes of its inventors. It provided the energy for Patton's race across France and enabled Allied forces to strike at the Germans while they were still confused and disorganized. By winning the Battle of Supply, it helped win the Battle of France. After the German retreat from France, Karl Sachs fights in Hungary against the Russians. When Germany surrenders, he gives himself up to American troops in Austria. Gerald Keane participates in 5 major campaigns from Normandy to Germany itself before the war is ended. In November 1945, he returns home. By necessity, the Red Ball Express was continued beyond its initial mission. The Red Ball route was extended eastward through Versailles, and by the end of the pursuit in mid-September, it had delivered over 135,000 tons to the forward delivery areas. The Red Ball Express was an audacious gamble. It got Allied armies there fastest with the mostest.